Hi guys, BuildZoid here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Asrock X570 Taichi BIOS. So yeah, let's get right into it. Starting off with the main tab here, you just get some information about like what BIOS version you're on, what CPU you have, what frequency it's at. Oh, I have a mild overclock on it, right? I was testing something before making this video. Right now it's all on the defaults, but yeah, anyway, what memory you have, what frequency that memory is running at. So start going through this. OC Tweaker tab, the first thing you get is overclock mode for the BCLK, so you can put your BCLK manual, then you can increase it in increments of 1 megahertz. It does not go below 100 megahertz. Really, there's no reason to... Actually, no. There are reasons to mess with that. They're all not practical, okay? Like, if you tweak the BCLK on X570... you're probably going to cause yourself more issues than benefits because it overclocks your PCIe, it overclocks your SATA, everything starts to break. My experience so far has been that the X570 chipset itself absolutely, like the SATA ports from the X570 chipset itself do not work if you change the BCLK, so... yeah, I just wouldn't touch that. Below that, you get the spread spectrum. So this is basically the frequency of the BCLK gets adjusted up and down a little bit. So that it, for EMI compliance reasons. But, you know, if you want your BCLK to be locked at 100 megahertz, you want to disable that. If you have EMI issues, you might want to put it on auto. But honestly, I'd leave it disabled. I've never, like, I don't know. You might have sensitive radio equipment or something that would pick up the kind of noise that this might produce. But, yeah, I have no experience with that ever causing issues, so you should just put it disabled. That way your BCLK doesn't drift around a little bit. Anyway, next we have CPU frequency and voltage, which you can set to manual, and this is where we get into the Asrock BIOS is strange part of the BIOS walkthrough. You have a vid setting right here. I don't know why it exists. It doesn't seem to do anything different than your other vCore settings, but hey, it's here. Yeah, you can set your vCore from here. You can also set your vCore from the external voltage settings. I don't believe either of them has like a granular. Yeah, no, this is 6.25 millivolts, which is the vid standard for AMD. And I'm pretty sure if you put this in fixed mode, oh, this is 5 millivolts. Okay, so this is actually more granular. Actually, I wonder if that actually works, because I wouldn't put it past Asrock for them to say that it's in 5 millivolts and then it actually rounds to the nearest 6.25 millivolt value. Like, if that was how it worked, that wouldn't really surprise me. Anyway, so we're going to put that back on auto for now, but yeah, so you have a vid setting right here. I'm actually not sure which one takes priority over the other, but honestly, with Ryzen, you know, you can try that out yourself, I guess. It's not that difficult to check which one takes priority, and you might be like, BuildZoid, why don't you do that? And it's like, because I really don't feel like testing that right now, or really ever. I just kind of want to be done with this motherboard and move on. Not because it's bad, it's just not very interesting. Honestly, like, I need to stop trying, like, I need to stop reviewing motherboards. I'm getting sick of them to, like, extreme levels. Like, it's just like, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, at this point, it's just like, I want to basically get done with this board and then flip it. Because I did actually have to buy this thing. It's not like I have a sample from Asrock and it's just like, it's good, but I have zero use for it outside of just making videos. And I have a bunch of other X570 boards that I'd much rather use for any kind of overclocking adventures. So, yeah, anyway, next we have SoC, Encore OC voltage. So, vid, again, like, so... Actually, oh, SoC Encore. So, okay, well, that's just dumb. But anyway, so this right here is just a vid setting for your SoC voltage. Works the same way as this setting right here. I don't know why it exists in two places. You can also find it in the, in the external VRM settings menu as well, which is like, I mean, external voltage settings, which, like, this looks like they almost took an X299 BIOS and then just plopped AMD terminology onto it, which is just like, well, that's why it's a mess, isn't it? Anyway, so next we get VDDP and then VDDG CCD control, which is concerning because the VDDG IO voltage for some reason isn't present. which I guess we'll find out if it's buried somewhere in the advanced tab, because there is a VDDG CCD and there's a VDDG IO die, and there are actually like, you don't necessarily want them in lockstep with each other. So this right here is just like, yeah, where's the other one? On previous BIOS versions, you'd actually have just one VDDG voltage, but with the newer BIOSes, there should be two of them. So I don't know where the second one is right now. Anyway, next we have DRAM information. Basically, it just reads the SPD profile of your memory sticks. Not enough to actually tell you the die, though, the memory, like, chip die, but yeah, tells you some information. And you can select which memory slot you're checking the SPD of. Next, you have load XMP profiles. So, yeah, you can load your XMP profile through that. Or you can change your DRAM. Like, the thing is, you don't get access to your DRAM timing configuration unless you change the frequency, which I think is... Like, I don't really see the point of doing it that way, but there's no real harm in having it done that way either. So, yeah, you can change your frequency through that. Next, you have DRAM voltage. I wonder if there's... That also has an external... Yeah, okay, well, no, it doesn't. So, here, for some reason, DRAM voltage is here, and it's only once, so... Yeah, anyway, they seem to have it turn red very early. Yeah, they have it turn red at 1.4 volts. That's really quite early. Like, there's no reason to do it that early. Also, the stock voltage limit is... Oh, I think that's because I have it enabled, right? Yeah, if we put that to disabled, then... Oh. Oh, looks like the voltage limit went away. Cool. That's great. So it goes all the way up to 2.2 volts. Anyway, then you also get your Infinity Fabric frequency settings. Those don't reveal anything if you change them. So put that back to auto. I'm going to set the frequency just so that we can look at the timings. So there's all of your timings. This is also my least favorite part of Asrock BIOS, which is like if you change a timing, then... Wait, that's gone too? Oh my god, they fixed that! They must watch my channel. Like, that is my #1 complaint for Asrock BIOS for a while, has been like, if you have an input, then you need to double tap, but they fixed that. It works like a normal BIOS now. Oh my god. Okay, so actually, yeah, that's a big upgrade, isn't it? Now I'm concerned. Because I think I'm the only person who complains about Asrock's BIOS doing that. So it's just like... They must have seen my... Well... Because I swear in the last... Wait. Yeah, like the last time I used this board, it didn't do that. I think I was using it for memory overclocking at the time. I don't think it was a full BIOS walkthrough. Oh no, it was like first impressions with memory overclocking. So, yeah, they've fixed that. That's great, actually. I didn't even notice. Like, I'm so used to that being the norm that it's really jarring for me when I use an Asrock board and it doesn't do that. Where you need to you need to first confirm your input before it lets you go to another setting. But, yeah, that's gone. Oh, man, now when I switch to my X299 OC formula, that's going to be so much more painful. Because now it's like there's different, like, Asrock BIOS behaves differently between Asrock's own boards. Anyway, yeah, so that's gone. That's amazing. I've just really padded out the video by celebrating how they finally, like, it's gone. It's amazing. Like, I love it. It's so much better. Anyway, so then you have at the bottom, like, so you get all your timings as usual for AMD. And down here, you get proc ODT, you get your command rate, you get your gear down mode enable, disable, power down enable, disable. I actually like the way that Asrock has the power down enable, disable somewhat more easily accessible than some of the other BIOSes out there. Like on some boards, you kind of need to dig for that one, let's say in the advanced tab, and it's a bit annoying. Then you have data bus configuration for your termination settings. Then you have your CAD bus configuration for these, which I actually don't change those settings ever myself, so yeah, don't know anything about those. But then you get the drive strengths. These all default to 24 ohms. It's kind of a shame that the boards, like, I don't actually know why no motherboard will show you what the default drive strength settings are, but you can actually check them through Ryzen Master anyway, so it's not really a big deal. It's just like, yeah, if you want to know what the board is setting when you have this set to auto, so that you have like a starting point reference, you just use Ryzen Master in Windows to check those settings. And then you have some DRAM profiles down here. They have 4,200 megahertz profiles. Those are not good. Why would you... Yeah, why would you do that? Like, no. No, that's just a bad idea. Let's see. Is the profile at least... And it's a reasonable profile. It's just like there's absolutely no reason to run 4,200 megahertz on Ryzen. Like, this is just going to give you worse performance than if you were running, like, 1-to-1 FCLK settings. So, yeah, the profiles, like, they're not wrong. Like, there's nothing inherently super wrong with them. But they're just... Wait, is there... Where's the auto? There's the auto. They're just... Oh, yeah, and now you can do the... Yes, it feels so good to be able to do that. Just go through all the settings, mashing auto and up arrow. Anyway, so... Yeah, they fixed that. That's good. I'm a big fan of that. Anyway, so yeah, they have the profiles. Like, the thing is on Ryzen, you don't want to run your memory out of sync with your FCLK, so it's just going past 3,800 meg. Like, going past what your FCLK can do is just completely and utterly pointless. So, like, a 42 megahertz profile is just useless. So I'm not really sure why. Like, I think they should have like a tight. So better profiles would be like tight 3600, tight 3730. Actually, 3600, 3666, 3733, and 3800 with tight subtimings for a variety of ICs. I think would be a much better set of profiles than a 4200 megahertz profile that like you're just never going to use if you actually care about performance. So yeah. Anyway, that like. Man, I still can't believe that I fixed my #1 complaint for Asrock BIOS. It's like, it's not clunky anymore. It doesn't take twice as many key inputs to do the same thing as every other board anymore. Anyway, so next we get the external voltage settings load line calibration folder. Here you have, well, yeah, they have a folder icon, so I'll just call it a folder, though really we should probably just call it a submenu, but... Anyway, yeah, so you have overclocking voltage range, which reveals some extra voltages. Basically, the extra voltages are like the, well, okay, let's go from the top. So, CPU core voltage, you have offset mode, you have fixed mode. All right, offset. How does that work? So, I assume if we, yeah, okay, so they, like, okay, so that's how they have that implemented. That's nice. Let's see where the limit is. Oh, whoa. Is that actually a valid input? Oh, wait, I'm just going to put, like... Interesting. And I assume the opposite works as well? Oh, no, just minus 500. Okay. Not that that's actually useful. That's an interesting range, though. I wonder how they're getting that, because... Like, normally, that would be a register on the voltage controller, and that one... On a lot of controllers, I don't think it should go up to 1,000 millivolts. Like, you shouldn't be able to set it that high, but... Anyway, it's not like you'd actually need to go... Like, going past, like, 200 millivolts negative offset, you're probably not going to work at all. So, not really a concern. Then you have, of course, fixed mode, which works about as you'd expect. And actually, what is the... Okay, so upper limit is 2.5 volts, but I assume that's if we disable... Is it still? Yeah, okay, so they have like a more normal limit if you hide all the advanced voltages, as well as you get a ridiculous voltage limit. Now, the LLC settings, I've not tested them on this board, but you have level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, don't know which one is optimal. I guess I should make an Well, the thing is manually overclocking Ryzen doesn't make a ton of sense. We'll see once I get my 3950X. I might do something more in-depth with like what LLCs, what kind of settings to run everywhere, but yeah, so you have LLC settings, you have 5 of them, which is standard for ASRock motherboards. Then you have your SoC voltage, also offset mode. I have no idea why you'd ever offset your SoC voltage, because this is a voltage that ideally you would want static, because your memory controller doesn't really downclock. So having the voltage go up and down is a great way to just not have any stability. So you should, in my opinion, just run that in fixed mode. Let's see where the upper limit of that is. Yeah, okay, 1.8 volts. So plenty to blow up your memory controller. Realistically, you shouldn't be going over 1.2 volts ever. They don't seem to have any warning, so I guess because there used to be a thing early on that apparently your PCIe 4.0 would stop working if you ran too much SoC voltage, but I guess that got fixed eventually, because I've not seen a board warn me about that in a while now, so Whereas like the earlier motherboards, some of them would, like earlier BIOSes, you'd sometimes get a warning like, hey, your PCIe 4.0 is going to stop working if you do that. Anyway, so SoC voltage, what's the lower limit? Just 0.9 volts, which is fine. Like, I don't really see a reason why you'd want to go below that anyway. LLC settings for your SoC voltage. vCore overcurrent protection, you can disable that. So, you know, if you were doing extreme overclocking and the motherboard was tripping OCP, you can disable that. That's actually neat. Over voltage protection, you can disable that too. Actually, I think that's the AMD overcurrent protection limit. So yeah, you might have to disable that even if you're not doing like LN2. Can't remember now. I think I had to, like, a lot of BIOSes don't have these two anymore, so I can't remember what exactly, like, I remember them being on first gen, and I just ran them disabled. Like, here's the thing. If you're not shoving insane voltage into your CPU, you won't have an overcurrent protection event, like, you won't have an overcurrent problem anyway, so having overcurrent protection is kind of useless. So, yeah. Like, having it enabled is kind of useless. Unless you're one of those people who likes dumping water on their motherboard for no reason while it's running. In which case, then OCP might save your VRM from a short circuit. But otherwise, yeah, no. Anyway, next we get VTT-DDR as an offset. So that goes in 10 millivolt increments. I'm not a fan of that, to be completely honest. I mean, the there's other motherboards that have VTT-DDR as an offset, but... it's kind of awkward because the VTT-DDR is a voltage that if you're doing memory overclocking, you might need to set it, like normally it should be half of your VDIM. So that's what it would be on auto. And then you can use the offset to shift it down from that half value or up. So, you know, if you're at 1.5 volts and you wanted 0.8 volts termination volt VTT-DDR, which it is a termination voltage, but the thing is there's many of those, so it's not really fair to refer to it as the only termination voltage. But anyway, if you wanted to say 0.8 volts of VTT-DDR, you'd have to set plus 50, and which you can. But the thing is, this gets kind of awkward if you're, you know, tweaking your DIMM voltage up and down trying to search for stability, and then you also need to keep track of where exactly your VTT-DDR is relative to that, like yourself, because on other motherboards, you know, you can often just punch in, I want VTT-DDR of 0.8, and it's going to be 0.8 no matter what you do. Here, it's going to go up and down based on what your DIMM voltage is, because it's going to be, like, the offset is applied on top of the half VDIM that the VTT-DDR defaults to. So, yeah, like this, like... it's better than not having any VTT-DDR control at all. It's just a really, it's not my favorite way of handling this, but at least it's present. Like, there are some motherboards out there where you just don't get control over the VTT-DDR regulator, and that's a lot more, that's a lot more annoying, in my opinion, because it's just like, well, you can't control it unless you physically modify the motherboard, so, which, you know, for most people is not an option. Then we have VPPM voltage, which I actually don't know what that voltage is for. You get CPU VDD 1.8, VDDP. That's for your... these are chipset voltages down here. Interesting that they have prem instead of like prom, because it should be promotory for the chipset, but yeah, they have prem for whatever reason. Also, CPU VDD voltage, sometimes tweaking that up to around, say, 1.95 volts can help with CPU core clock stability. Yeah, I've not really, like, at least that was a bit, like, on some CPUs that works for, especially for second gen, that would work quite frequently, but third gen, I've not noticed that yet, even though, like, I have messed around with it and it's just not been a thing. Then we have SVID VR hot and SoC. So basically safety functionality for the VRM. So you can set the so you can set the temperature limit for the VRM up to 130 degrees, which is pretty cool. And I think auto is 105. Yeah, looks like auto is 105 because they don't let you set 105. That's actually a very, I'd say a little bit on the safe side. But definitely, you know, like, the VRM on this board is solid, so it shouldn't really be hitting 105 degrees anyway, so not really a concern in my opinion. Next, we have CPU vCore ICC max, so this is maximum current limit, and that tops out at... oh, it seems like they have it defaulted to the maximum value. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine, I approve of that. The current limit should be disabled. SoC... And then actually that might be tied into me having it, like having the extra voltage range enabled. That might be defaulting higher because of that. And then SoC ICC max is, well, I assume that's in amps. So that's pretty high as well. But again, like, unless you're shoving insane, like, the thing about overcurrent protection is, like, if you have an inadequate power delivery system, that's when you need OCP. But if you have a motherboard that's built well, you don't need OCP because the CPU is going to up and die before the VRM, you know, starts complaining about the load you're applying to it. So, yeah, this is definitely like a motherboard where having no OCP or whatever, it's totally cool with that. That's fine as far as I'm concerned. So, anyway, because the other thing is, if like they set an OCP that was like reasonable relative to the VRM, it would still be so high that you're going to blow up your CPU before the VRM even starts, like before the OCP kicks in. So, yeah. Next we have some profiles. Unfortunately, like this is one of the sort of weaker points of this BIOS is just like, I would have been complaining about how clunky it is, but they fixed that. So, still. You know, complain about things is kind of like you can't. In my opinion, it is lazy to not find faults with things because nothing is ever perfect. So, weaker point here: only 5 user profiles in the BIOS itself. Right? There's other motherboards that go up to like 8 or 9. Though again, at the same time, I don't think like a lot of people won't be saving like 1 million BIOS profiles anyway. And if you are, you can always just save the profiles to like a USB stick or something through this right here. And I don't think I have anything plugged. Actually, yeah, I don't think I have a USB stick plugged into the board right now, so obviously nothing is showing up. Yeah, and then you can save and load BIOS profiles from a disk as well, so that's what you got down here. And actually, I wonder what the current character limit. Yeah, so you can set pretty long profile names, long enough that they don't fit in the little text box. So, yeah, that's the OC Tweaker tab. Honestly, now that they cleaned up the whole, you know, confirming your inputs thing, is like, I don't really have any complaints left, because that was my biggest issue with a lot of Asrock BIOS. Well, the having multiple options for, like, your vCore and your SoC voltage, right, having both, like, 2 places to set both of them, little bit on the confusing side, not really a big deal, though. So, yeah, like, you can just test which one it is that actually does what you want and then, you know, move on with your life. As far as I can tell, there's no difference between setting either. So, yeah, anyway, advanced tab, CPU configuration. We get this. I don't know what that does. I don't know what this does either, but it exists. Same here. SMT mode, you can disable simultaneous multi-threading. So, yeah. Apparently S3, I guess sleep is like disabled if you don't have SMT enabled. That's interesting. And then FTPM switch, which, well, it doesn't show up any extra options, so that's a good thing, but I don't know what it does either, but it exists. So if you need some of these options, then yeah, they are present. Honestly, the SMT thing is like I've been thinking about this, but if you wanted to get like maximum gaming performance out of like a 3950X, you would run it with SMT disabled and you'd still have a 16 core. So it's just like you wouldn't, like, theoretically, it still wouldn't have less multi-threaded performance than a 9900K at that point. Like, you still have more multi-threaded performance than a 9900K, but it would push the single-threaded performance of the CPU up a little bit more. So, yeah, that could be kind of interesting if I actually cared about doing, like, game performance testing. Anyway, next we have onboard devices configuration. You can turn on LED. It's 5. I assume that's some kind of sleep state. SRIOV support, no idea what that does, but it exists. Onboard HD audio, you can enable, disable your audio. Then you have front panel audio settings, which I actually don't know what those do either. I just don't really pay that much attention to onboard audio on motherboards. Then you have restore AC power loss. So, you know, what should the system do once you restore AC power after a power outage? So, yeah, you can change those between always turn on after restoring AC power or stay turned off after restoring AC power. Wireless network radio. Oh, disable the Wi-Fi. Bluetooth on-off. And PS2 Y cable. So, yeah, if you have a cable that allows you to plug in both a mouse and a keyboard, then you You can have that enabled or set to auto. Interesting that they don't, like, auto and enable is just like, it feels like disabled is missing, but, whatever. Next, we have storage configuration. You can choose between RAID mode and AHCI. Then you have chipset SATA configuration. There are only chipset SATA ports on this motherboard, and there is a lot of them. So, yeah. So eSATA support, I assume that's hot plug. So, support on those. Anyway, next we have ACPI configuration. So, no idea what that does, but it exists. Deep sleep. Well, in S5, S4. Oh, so, yeah, it is a sleep mode. Not sure about those, like, here's the thing, like, a lot of this power savings stuff is just like, I don't really care. PS/2 keyboard wake up support, disabled, or any key. PCIe devices power on, so if you want the motherboard to turn on through a PCIe device. Real-time clock alarm power on, enabled, disabled. Well, actually, you have disable, enable, BIOS. If you have it enabled, you can choose a power on time. And we're just going to put that back to disabled. USB power delivery in soft state. So you can keep your USB ports powered even when the when the system is turned off. I assume S5 is turned off. Turned off as in, like, you still have the power supply 5-volt standby rail is running, but the system's not running. I should probably look up the different sleep. Well, no, because I'll forget it again, so it just doesn't matter. It's like, I could go look up what the different sleep states are called and, like, but honestly, I won't remember it for more than one video, so it's just like, that's kind of a pointless endeavor. Anyway, security device support. It'll be like my endeavor to learn French in high school. I don't remember any French. Anyway, security device support. You can enable that, disable that. I don't have anything, installed right now. It's like, I don't have a TPM module right now, so obviously there's nothing here. And we get into AMD CBS, CPU common options, performance, custom core P states. Go all the way down here. There's your custom P states. I remember messing with this, like, on first gen Ryzen and it not being very useful for anything, so yeah, but it exists. Also, this is a weird thing, is if you go to, like, this menu and then hit escape, it kicks you back to CPU common options instead of the actual, like, it throws you back 2 folders instead of just 1. And yeah, the performance menu just doesn't have anything. So then we have prefetcher settings for L1, stream hardware prefetcher. Don't actually know what this does either, but it exists, and you can enable it, disable it. I assume it actually works. Like, that's sometimes with the advanced tab options, you run into things that the motherboard doesn't necessarily actually physically support. Anyway, next we have Core Watchdog. No idea what this does either, but you can enable it, disable it. Well, actually, I did look this up, and it's just like, I already don't care what it does, so there. But if you do care about what it does, then yeah, it's present in the BIOS, you can set it right there. Core performance boost, you can disable core performance boost if you want your CPU to run at base clock all the time. Global C states control, you can enable, disable those. Power supply idle control, so if you have a power supply that doesn't do low current idle very well, because basically the power supply is not designed to output very little current when it's not designed to output very little current ever. So if you have a power supply that has problems with that, you can just run typical current idle. If you have a more modern power supply that does support very low current idle, then you can have low current idle. Basically, more like low current idle is more power savings than typical current idle, because not all power supplies will support having below a certain percentage of their capacity as their output power. It can cause issues. Then we have Sev ACID count. I have no idea what this does either, but it exists. And then we have this, which you can set to manual. Don't know what that does. Actually, wait. Yeah, no idea what that does. We're gonna put that back on auto. Streaming stores control. Don't know what that does either, but it exists. Actually, does this show up any? No, it doesn't. Good. So at this point, you might be like, Buildzoid, why do you do these walkthroughs? The point of these walkthroughs is that if there's some obscure BIOS setting that you care about, you can find it in a video, because a lot of the time, like, sometimes I'll go looking for some random setting in some BIOS, and you'll find out, wait, there's no way to actually Google if that BIOS setting even exists, because it's not in the motherboard manual, because it doesn't go through every single sub-menu. And there's no review that'll actually give you every single setting covered. So that's the point of these. So lots of settings, I don't know what they do, but you might know what they do and you might need them. So that's why we go through every single thing. MCA error threshold. Okay, so some kind of error thing. I don't know what it does. PP and opt-in, enable, disable. No idea what that does either. Indirect branch prediction speculation. So this should be the branch prediction for the CPU. So I assume if you disable this, you're going to just lose like a bunch of performance. So probably want to leave that on auto, and which I assume auto is just enabled on that. So that's the entire CPU common options. Let's go to DF options. So DF stands for data fabric common options. So first we have the scrubber settings, DRAM scrub time. I don't know. I assume this is to like... No, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna guess at it. But yeah, so that exists. Poison scrubber control exists. No idea what it does. Then you have redirect scrubber control. No idea what that does either. This exists as well. No idea what that does. Oh, wrong button. Escape. Anyway, memory addressing, NUMA nodes per socket. So this I don't think should be present on this platform, because as far as I know, there's one memory controller and it's equidistant for all cores. So yeah, I have no idea what this is doing in this BIOS. Like, this seems like it shouldn't be on this platform. Anyway, then we have memory interleaving, which you can disable for some reason. Then you have memory interleaving size, which I guess you could try messing around with that to see if you can get more performance out of it, but I personally would just leave that on auto. 1 terabyte remap. Attempt to remap the DRAM out of the... Like, just actually use the description for a lot of these. Yeah, the description for some of these settings is actually pretty good, but this exists. You might need that if you somehow figure it. Actually, yeah, these are like server settings. These shouldn't be present on this platform at all, because you can't even buy 1 terabyte of memory that'll like work on X570, because you'd need registered DIMMs, and as far as I know, those aren't supported with the mainstream Ryzen CPUs. So like, if you had 4, like, you can get 256 gigabyte registered DIMMs. Those exist. That's normal. So if you had 4 of those, you'd want to have 1 terabyte of RAM, but like, you can't run them on this platform. So I don't know why all of these, like, these settings, I'm not sure why they exist. Well, the memory interleaving, okay, those are normal, but some of the other ones is just like, why are these here? DRAM map inversion, you have disable, enable. Don't know what this does, but it exists. ACPI, more. Oh boy. Oh man, it makes it worse. Okay, so I guess... Okay, if we put that back down to auto and change this one... Oh. I have no idea what any of this does, but it exists. It looks like there might be some use case where you care about that. So, yeah, that's a thing. GMI encryption control. You can disable the GMI link encryption. I wonder if there would be a performance benefit to disabling that. There could be. Anyway, you probably don't want that disabled. You can enable, disable it for all the other ones. And there's this thing, which Cake CRC performance bounds controls. No idea what that does either. And actually, on manual, what is that? Oh, cool. Then 4-link XGMI max speed. Three-link XGMI. Well, those exist. I'd have to look them up if I actually wanted to know what those do. Disable data fabric to external... Wait, we just went through all of those, right? Yeah, we just went through all of those, so... Disable DF to external IP sync flood propagation. Man, like, Asrock seems to just have an advanced tab that gives you access to everything. Which is not good if you're like me, where it's just like, I only care about the things that make the CPU go faster. So, it's just like some of these options, yeah. Anyway, so you have whatever the hell these mean. That exists. This exists. Okay, that's not throwing up any extra options, which is a good thing. Okay, cool. And you have this. You can enable, disable that as well. So that's all of those. And then we have unified memory controller, common options. You can change your DRAM timings from the, like, you can change your memory timings here instead of in the normal place, like a normal person. There's no reason to do it from here. Don't do it. Like, just don't. Like, there's no point. Don't bother with that. DRAM controller configuration, you can choose command rate, gear down mode. Again, you can access those through the memory, like the other menu in the OC tweaker, which is like where you should do this from instead of digging around in here. You can also enable, disable power down. So, you know, like the thing is, a lot of this is like if you had a BIOS that didn't have like the motherboard vendors will build a OC tweaker tab, but AMD ships the BIOS to the board vendors with all of the options you find in the AMD CBS menus, along with like the AMD PBS and AMD overclocking menus. So, you know, if you were doing like a completely stripped down BIOS with none of the nice presentation additions that you get, then yeah, you'd be just stuck with these folders here. But luckily, you don't have to go through a bunch of submenus to find, you know, basic overclocking settings like timings and stuff, because the board vendors set that up for you. So anyway, UMC common options, DRAM memory mapping. Wait, for common, we were here, yeah. DRAM config. Okay, so we went through all of those. CAD bus configuration. Again, like the same settings as what you get in the DRAM timing menu, just in a more awkward location. So you don't need to go there. Data bus configuration controls. Again, termination settings just in an awkward location. Common RAS, or RAS. Data poisoning thing. Actually, I don't know what this does. Don't know what these do either. Or this. There's no help string with these either, so... just like, yeah, I'm not being very helpful either, but... Can't blame me. That help string is concerning, not helpful. Anyway, this looks like some kind of ECC. Oh, well, no, I'm not gonna try. Like, I'm probably just gonna say something stupid. So, this looks like an ECC thing, though. Anyway, don't know what that does. Write CRC enabled. Don't know what that does, but it exists. This also exists. And you can adjust this value down here. Disable memory error injection. I have no idea what that does. Oh, then we get more ECC settings. So, yeah, those exist. If you know how to work with ECC memory, then, you know, that's for you, not for me, because I don't actually have any ECC DIMMs at all. So I think that covers all of the... No, we just went through... Oh my god, there is so many menus! Then we have security settings. You can enable this... Okay, it doesn't show any extra options. Good. And this doesn't either. Thank you. PHY configuration. So memory controller settings. This might help. Like, messing with some of these might help you get better memory overclocks. But I've never messed with them myself because they're kind of off the deep end. So, yeah. So, that's what those are. Those exist. If you know more about memory overclocking than I do... Okay, this is getting really annoying with the whole, like, you go 2 menus deep and then you hit escape and it throws... Oh, no, this one. Oh, some of them kick you back to menus, some of them don't. Cool. That's very consistent. But that is, well, here's the thing. In my, like, this is less of a problem than the input confirmation that the older BIOSes had, because you won't really be digging in the advanced tab too often, in my opinion. So this place being a bit of a mess is fine. NVDIM, there's nothing there. Good. I was worried there'd be more settings. MBIST enable, no idea what that does, but it exists. There's a bunch of memory boot initial. That sounds like more training settings. Especially considering, like, you have the, like, test single and multiple CS transactions. Then we have whatever this does. This looks like more memory controller training settings. So that's... I'm kind of interested in messing with these, and at the same time, I have no idea what any of them do, so I'd have to look these up to get an idea of what they're supposed to do, but... Yeah, this looks like a bunch of extra training settings for the memory controller. Okay, they don't show any extra options, so that's good. We'll just disable that. We have data I. Oh my god. Yeah, lots of memory controller training settings. And no help menu. Well, no help information. That's great. Oh, man. Okay, like... No idea what any of this does. But... Per chip select, per... Oh my god. Read timing sweep. Like, if you knew what you were doing with this, you could probably... Like, these can be very... Like, this is the thing, is sometimes you get settings where it's like, this is the whole with great power comes great responsibility to end of the BIOS, where it's like, these look like you could probably do some really impressive things with the memory settings, but I don't know anything about any of these. Because that just looks like a bunch of training stuff. So, yeah, that's the deep end of the memory settings. I think we just went through all of them, didn't we? Yeah, we did that, we did this. Yeah, we went through all of them, so cool. NBIO common options, this is where you get stuff like IOMMU, which I don't know what it does. Somebody did actually, like, there was multiple comments explaining what this does on one of my previous BIOS walkthroughs. I read them and was like, cool, and forgot. So, anyway, you can enable, disable that, or just leave it auto. XFR enhancement, if you decline, it's going to kick you back out, but if you accept it, well, you can get to the precision boost overdrive settings, which you can run disabled, enabled, manual, right? Where you can just change the limits. And let's see if they have the... Okay, so if you have them set to that 65,000 value, that actually bugs out the boost system. So don't do that. You're going to want to limit yourself to something reasonable, like 600 amps. And I said 600... Well, actually, 6,000 amps is just fine, too. Like, the CPU is never going to be able to hit that, so it's not a problem. But yeah, you don't want it to be, like, rolling over into that 65K value, because, like, this right here actually, like, causes some issues. Some of the other high values might cause them as well. So I would stick to 3-digit numbers if you want your boost system to actually behave normally, because if you set it to 65,000, it does... like, I've had weird issues with that. So, wait, how do you set these back to auto? Oh, actually, they were just 0, weren't they? So, yeah. You can set it manual, and there's enable, which enable will just preload a bunch of settings from the motherboard itself. Then you have the overdrive scaler, which you can have it disabled, or you can have it set to manual. It goes from 1 to up to 10. I've not, like, the thing is, I think this might change how much, like, how it behaves with AGSA versions. I've not tested it here, but generally in my experience, up to around, like, 5, it actually makes some small adjustments to how much voltage you're getting and doesn't really change the boost that much. And then going up to 10, it really doesn't do anything. Like, the actual frequencies don't change across the board in my past experience, but your voltages change going between, like, 1 to 5x. But the performance doesn't. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm not really a whole fan of the boost. Like, the boosts is like, PBO, I think, could be a lot more powerful if it was a lot less, like, if you could tune it more than what AMD normal like gives you access to. Anyway, this is where your PBO settings are. FCLK frequency. Again, you can just access this through the OC tweaker if you're a normal person, or you can go all the way down here and set it here instead. Then we have SoC overclock vid. I would not mess with that value if I were you, just because you could just set your SoC voltage through the OC tweaker menu. But hey, if you want to calculate your voltage in hex values, have fun with this one. Then you have UCLK div1 mode, so you can change if the if your memory controller runs at 1/2 memory clock or at memory clock. For best performance, you're going to want it at 1-to-1 with memory clock. If you're going for high frequency, you're going to have it wanted at, well, like, it's going to go to 1/2. Like, if you leave it on auto, the board's actually going to take care of this for you. So you don't really need to worry about it too much. Then you have VDDP voltage control, right? Again, you can access VDDP through here. You can also access it through the, XFR enhancement menu. So if you want to mess with it here, you can. And that is in millivolts, isn't it? I think it is in millivolts. Pretty sure. Yeah, it's in millivolts. Yeah, it is in millivolts. I can't read. I'm blind. Anyway, VDDG, you can, change VDDG here. There's no real reason to do that when you can access it through the OC tweaker. Interestingly, wait a minute. Why isn't there IO, like, I was expecting an IO die one somewhere, and there's not. Anyway, you can put that back to auto. SoC Encore OC mode. So you can put that enabled. This will lock the SoC frequency to full speed all the time. If you have it auto, then it'll, like, I think you'd have to leave the FCLK auto as well, but it'll, like, clock up and down dynamically to save some power. But yeah, if you're overclocking, I would honestly just set it to OC mode enabled. Anyway, auto LN2 mode enable, disable. If you're on LN2, then you're going to want to enable that. If you're not on LN2, there's no reason to have it enabled. So we have PCI ARI support. No idea what that does, but it exists. You can, disable that, enable that, have it on auto. PCIe 10-bit tag support. No idea what this does either, but it exists. HD audio. For some reason, you can disable your audio from here as well. SMU control options, max voltage offset. That is weird. I don't know what that does. I've straight up never seen that setting before. Oh, here you have efficiency mode. Yeah, so this is gonna, like, lower your power consumption, but it'll slow down your CPU as well if you enable that. CTDP control, so you can set a custom TDP for the CPU if you want. You can, save some, like, you can slow the CPU down to, say, 50 watts. Anyway, the auto package power limit, similar to CTDP control. So you can adjust the power limit for the CPU. All right. Which actually, I think CTDP, oh no, here it goes all the way up. Interesting. But we'll put those back to auto. APBDIS. No idea what this is. Oh. Advanced power. I assume it's like advanced power something, but anyway, evidently if you have that on, you can enable data fabric C states, which is more power savings. So, or you can have that disabled, I guess. Or just leave it auto. DFC, actually, wait, no. Oh, wait. Oh, you can lock the SOCP state. Okay. And then if you have it on 0, you can't. Cool. Okay, that is awkward how that pops up under the DFC states menu. Especially since that doesn't actually do anything to it. Cool. We're going to put that back to auto. DFC states, you can enable, you know, disable C states for the data fabric. Leave that auto. Or disable it. C, so the Windows preferred cores setting thing, or part of it. Or you can just leave it auto. All right, boost Fmax enable, manual, so you can override the max boost clock from here. How much can you override it? I think that's probably just like they don't have a, like they don't prevent you from inputting invalid values for that, because in theory it shouldn't allow you to go above 200 megahertz max boost increase. Wait a minute, specify the boost Fmax frequency. Wait. Could I set like 4? Oh. Okay, nope. That's a different setting. Okay, that is weird. To all cores. Well, it exists. Man, this is the thing. Like, a lot of like, I guess, like, there are some advantages to having access to all of this, but at the same time, it's just like, I've never seen a lot of these settings, so. And sometimes you run into a lot of settings where it's like, this doesn't do anything, which is why you won't see it on a lot of other motherboards, whereas Asrock just kind of leaves everything in, and then it's like, well, why doesn't this actually have any impact? Well, because it doesn't work, apparently. Though I don't know about this setting. Like, this could very well work. I just have no idea what it does because I've never seen it before. I don't really feel like going through everything and testing it. But I might test some of the more interesting ones. Anyway, we have enable AER cap here. Can enable... Wait, what did that do? What changed? ACS. Oh, man. That is so awkward that that pops up, like... up top. You can just wait. I don't know what the default setting was for that anymore. But yeah, that exists. Enable advanced error reporting capability. Cool. Early link speed. Gen 1, Gen 2. Is that like initial... Is that like post-process PCIe generation? I guess it would be. That's my assumption, but wait, or maybe that's for the GMI. Which I don't actually know what the GMI is, so anyway, that exists. I really wish I was more helpful at this point, but it's just like I feel like you could write a book about this BIOS. Presence detect select mode. Oh boy. Okay, so there's OR mode, AND mode, auto mode. I don't know what it's for, but that exists. CV test. Enable, disable exists. I don't know what it does. Loop back mode. At least it doesn't reveal any more settings. So enable, disable PCIe loop back. Just advanced stuff for things that I don't care about. There. That's what those settings are. FCH common options. So that's going to be for the chipset, right? XHCI controller mode. Okay, so some USB settings. MCM. Wait, what the hell? This looks like Threadripper stuff. Enable or disable USB controllers. Yeah, like... Well, okay, so some XHCI USB settings that, again, like, I don't pay attention that much attention to the USB standards, but those exist. You might need them. Chipset common options, final, and USB configuration, and yeah, you just get more USB settings. So that's, except these are for USB settings for the chipset, whereas these are evidently USB settings from the I/O die. So, yeah, that's the difference between those. Enable, disable, or set them to auto. I'm gonna get out of there and into AMD PBS. Oh boy, it doesn't end. Why doesn't it end? Okay. So, yeah. You have all of this right here. And then whatever the hell that is. Okay. This exists. No idea what that is either. Data link feature exchange enabled. Disable unused GPP clocks. Oh, wait. What? Okay. Clock. Power management. Just. Oh, there's just settings for days here. I've never seen any of these. Which is funny, because the AMD PBS menu exists on other motherboards, and Asrock seem to be the only ones where it's like, yeah, we'll just leave all of that in there. I wonder if this is some beta BIOS. No. Well, like, if this is some beta BIOS version, but I don't think it is. I think just Asrock really is just like, hey, if you want to screw with all these advanced settings, you can. Okay, yeah, here we have settings I actually understand down here. We have 4 GB memo. Well, okay, I've not understand. I've seen this before, don't know what it does. NVMe RAID mode, PCIe switch. Yeah, you can configure your PCIe slots to like split up for like M.2 SSD cards. PCIe generation, PCIe X8 bus interface. Oh, I guess that's for like the different PCIe slots as well. So like your main X16 slot, your X8 slot generation speed, chipset bus interface speed. If you're doing BCLK overclocking, then you might have to, you know, crank the set the PCIe generation lower. Adjust VDDCR, VDD full mode. Now that manual, full scale current. I've actually, like, okay, I've seen that setting before. I've never messed with it just because I've not had a need to, so don't really know what that's for, but it does exist. Thunderbolt support, which I don't think this motherboard supports Thunderbolt, but this is in the BIOS, so maybe it does. So, I don't know. There's also a good chance, like this being an Asrock board, there's a good chance they kind of just forgot this setting on here. Because I've had Asrock boards with no clock gen have clock gen BCLK settings where it's just like, the board physically does not have that chip. Why are there settings for it? Yeah, there's Thunderbolt. Apparently, this might have Thunderbolt support. So if you buy a Thunderbolt card, I guess you can enable that. And then you have some security level. For what, though? DisplayPort only. Oh, I guess that's for the Thunderbolt, maybe? I have no idea. Yeah, and then there's also like PCIe redriver settings. So, yeah, if you want to mess with like your PCIe signal integrity, here's the settings for that. Let's go out of this menu because this one's scary. AMD overclocking menu. So on some BIOS versions, this one has some interesting bugs. That I've had some motherboards where it wouldn't clear properly. So anyway, here you get your CCD overclocking, which unfortunately isn't implemented in the OC tweaker, which I think is like a real shame. Because like you might actually want like this, I think, especially if you have like a 3900X or a 3950X, per CCX overclocking could be like, in my opinion, is kind of the, like if you're going to run a static overclock, this is the way to go, is to do it per CCX. And you have a CPU voltage setting here, which again, you could just set it from here like a normal person. What else do you have? Core control, you can change how many cores you have active. 1+1, 2+2, 3+3, or auto. Then here we have eco mode, so you can enable eco mode to put the CPU at 45 watts power consumption. Precision boost overdrive settings, more of them. Oh, there's a separate current limit for the SoC. I've not seen that on any other motherboards. That I kind of want to. I wonder if there's any because sometimes there might be benefits to messing with that if you're pushing like high memory, like aggressive memory settings at the same time as running PBO. That might help with a bit more boost. And then you have disable, enable, advance, which really doesn't seem to... Motherboard, manual. Yeah, that, like, Asrock evidently hasn't done much here, but, like, the motherboard should preload these values with, like, motherboard-specific settings, but evidently that they just haven't bothered, or this isn't implemented, which is, like, fine. I don't really think you need to have motherboard settings available. You have the precision boost, PBO, overdrive scaler, right, which we've seen before. CPU boost, yeah, so boost clock override. So that is really interesting that there's that max FCLK for all cores setting in that other menu. I really want to mess with that. Like, I'm gonna have to look into that, because that is very interesting, because I've not seen it on any other board. Like, I can't remember seeing it on any other motherboards. And, like, I do these BIOS walkthroughs so that we go through every single freaking setting. So, you know, I just need to sit down and watch the video for, like... Well, actually, no, you can skip around, right? Like, that's the nice thing about... Well, somebody might be like, an article would be better, but I'd argue, honestly, you can search through a YouTube video just fine. Run it at 2x speed and then skip through to see which menus... Like, you can see on the screen which menu you're looking at, right? And you can approximate how near you are to the menu you want based on what's currently on the screen. So anyway, platform throttle, thermal throttle limit, auto, manual. You can set the thermal throttle for the CPU, which unfortunately you can't adjust it with the minus or plus keys, so that kind of sucks, but yeah, you can set the CPU thermal throttle. So we're going to put that back on auto. LN2 mode, you can enable, disable. SoC on Core OC mode, enable, disable. And that seems to be enabled by... Oh, might have been because I set it somewhere else. So that covers the entire AMD overclocking menu. And then we have whatever this is. Oh, yeah, so which page you default to. Right, so I'd actually, personally, I'd have it go to the OC tweaker first. Then full HD UEFI, you can disable, enable the UEFI being in 1080p. And have it at, like, lower resolution. Yeah, like 1024 by 768, you know, if you want your UEFI to look really ugly. If you want the real BIOS experience, you can disable that. No, honestly, like, now that they've gotten rid of the confirm your inputs thing, it's like that was my main complaint for Asrock BIOS all along. Anyway, let's go through the tool menu. So RGB, I gotta say, this is my favorite RGB implementation ever. Like this right here, where you can just key in freaking RGB values as, like, numbers. I love this. This is freaking awesome. I wish more motherboards did it this way. But, like, some motherboards have, like, a silly color picker thing, and this is like, no, just let me punch in the... And I don't care about RGB, but if you're gonna have RGB, have it freaking this way. Like, this is great. I like this. This is best RGB. Because the thing is, like, honestly, I just prefer static color, right? Because anything else, like, yeah, they just give you numbers for all of it. This is so much better. Because here's the thing, like, you basically choose any effect you want, and then you just hit apply RGB settings, and then you can see how that actually interacts with the board right there and then. So it's like, yeah, the numbers might initially look unintuitive, but I don't even know what the hell all of these are, but there's a bunch of different effects you can go through. Like, this is, in my opinion, a nice way to have it implemented, right? Because here's the thing, like, initially I wanted, like, 125 because I thought that would give me an orange. Because normally if you want yellow, you would set 255 and 255. Turns out that evidently the green LEDs on this motherboard are quite a bit stronger than the red ones. So to get orange, I actually have to run, like, 255 with 33, but you just hit apply RGB settings and it, you know, sets it for you. So that's, like, I like this RGB implementation. This is not that, like... I don't care about RGB, but this is a good way to do it, in my opinion. SSD secure erase tool, so some SSD erase functionality. I've never used this before, but it exists, so... And I'm not going to test run it on that hard drive. Even though that one probably does need a new operating system, I'm not going to trial it on right now. NVMe sanitization tool, I assume it's the same thing as the SSD secure erase. You can just, you know, wipe your NVMe SSD instead. Instant flash, you know, to update your BIOS from there. Then we have the hardware monitor. Here you get, you know, CPU temperature, chipset temperature, motherboard temperature, which I don't know what that's actually referring to. Might be VRM, might be some random sensor in like the middle of the board where there's nothing. Then you have CPU, you know, fan speeds, core voltages. Yeah, you have a bunch of different voltages. Don't necessarily put too much trust into a lot of these voltage readouts because the chip that's like, I assume these are off of the Super IO. The Super IO isn't super accurate in terms of voltage measurements, so they can be like off by quite a few millivolts in some cases. Like, yeah, like look at the VPPM voltage, right? Like that's going up and down by 30 millivolts because there's no, like, that's how little resolution that sensor has. And it's just like, well, that's very useful, right? Just so there's a lot of rounding error essentially on those readouts, but they're a good, you know, if you see something that's like, well, the thing is sometimes they'll just bug out and you'll get a reading that doesn't make, like, is completely like looks really bad, and then it's just like, oh, it's just bugged out. So I prefer using, like, if you need to check voltages because you actually need to troubleshoot something related to voltage, you should really be just using a multimeter and not relying on the Super IO to tell you, because it tends to be really bad about that. Anyway, then we have fan settings here. Okay, so you have a bunch of, that's interesting. So you can, you know, try set your fan settings numerically through here. You can have silent mode, standard mode, performance mode, full speed mode. And then you can, I guess, apply it to, oh, okay, this is a really awkward way to do, I guess this is like the legacy way of doing fan settings on Asrock boards, but I would say the much better way to do this would be, actually, let's just do standard mode. Just use the fantastic tuning thing. This looks like it'll force you to use the mouse, but watch. It doesn't. If you set, wait, CPU fan, customize, look, it's a sensible BIOS where you don't need to use the mouse to set your freaking fan settings. It's amazing. Okay, it's a little bit clunky, but how many times are you going to be tweaking? Well, I don't know. You might be tweaking your fan profile a lot of times, but anyway, I think, like, having any, like, there's, like, okay, it's a bit laggy, but it's not that bad. But basically my thoughts on using the mouse in the BIOS is, like, you shouldn't be forced into it. So just the fact that I can use the keyboard if I want to, which, yeah, it's a little bit clunky on which arrow key you have to hit to get to the next thing. But, yeah. This is a good way to do this, in my opinion. Like, this is a nice way to do fan control. I approve. I approve a lot. And then you have the automatic fan tuning feature. I don't know how much load this actually applies to the CPU, so I don't know how effective that'll be to actually properly set up a fan profile for you. Takes 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, I actually wouldn't trust that just because it takes 3 to 5 minutes. If you have a water cooling loop, your water temperature, like, depending on how much water you have in the loop, or even an AIO, 5 minutes is not going to thermally saturate the water, like, at all. So you're like, no, I would not trust that to set up a fan profile. Well, not dial in like a perfect one, but, like, I'd honestly just do it manually in that case. And even if you had an air cooler, like, some of the bigger ones can take quite long to thermally saturate. So yeah, I would probably just set, like, I would do my fan curves manually instead of relying on some automatic thing to do them. I don't know how bad, like, the other thing is I don't have the motherboard in a case, so I don't have, like, a realistic cooling reference for how effective that would work in, like, a real world scenario. Anyway, next we have the security settings, supervisor password, user password, secure boot settings. Oh boy, there's more stuff down here. Yeah, so that exists. HDD security configuration, which actually just seems to display a bunch of like, how it's configured, not really give you any settings. Here's your boot options. All right, you can choose the order in which things get booted. And your BBS priorities. for USB devices and hard drives. Boot from LAN, enable, disable, boot beep. You can have the board beep at you if you enjoy that. Setup, prompt, timeout, configure the number of seconds to wait for the UEFI setup. Right, so if you're having a hard time catching the BIOS with the del key, then you can crank that up to give yourself more time to get into the BIOS. Boot numlock state, on, off, full screen logo, on, off, add on. No idea what that does, but that's a thing. Fast boot, you can enable it, disable it. Apparently they don't have a normal fast boot, just an ultra fast boot. Cool. CSM, so I actually, like, I need CSM enabled basically all the time because I have some messed up BIOSes on a lot of my GPUs, so I'm just kind of stuck with that enabled, and that's why my fast boot doesn't work, but yeah. So you can have UEFI only, right, the usual fast boot stuff. Then you have the exit menu where you can save changes and exit, discard changes and exit, discard changes, yes, because I've screwed with a bunch of options and I'm not sure that I set them properly. Load UEFI defaults, why not? Launch EFI shell from file system. I've never used that, so we're not going to go into that. And then you have boot override, so you can like force the board to boot into the operating system from the BIOS. So yeah, I think that covers everything, except maybe the... Where is it? Where's easy mode? Oh, wait, there's no easy mode on this? Good. Right? There's no easy mode. Select screen, select item, change option, switch function, select, next page, previous, go to top of screen, go to bottom, general help, discard changes, load UEFI, default, save, and exit, print screen, exit. Awesome. There's no easy mode. Good. That's a good thing. So, yeah, that's the Taichi BIOS. And I gotta say, like, this latest version, it's good. It's really good. Like, I can go through and just set my... Oh, man. This is what setting timings should be like, not the... Because normally on other Asrock boards, you'd have to go punch in your timing, double tap. But here, no longer a thing. Oh, man. I hope they roll that out to like their Z390 boards and the X299 OC formula. Because that has been like, that's been my main issue with those boards for so long. And it's just like, well, it's not a thing anymore. And it's perfect. Like, honestly, this might be like, at this point, this might be straight up the most cost-effective X570 motherboard out there. Because, like, the only complaint I ever had for this was, like, the BIOS is a bit clunky. But at this point, like, you know, like, this, like, all the features are here. I think one thing they could do is, like, get the CCX settings accessible through the OC tweaker instead of from the advanced tab. Also, why is there only a CCD, like, why is it labeled CCD when there's no IO die VDDG voltage separately? Like, that's what I'm wondering about. Though I might just be remembering a separate IO die voltage from Threadripper, because I've been messing with Threadripper a lot. And I've not actually tried a 1.0 for, like, any other motherboards with the latest X570 BIOSes, so... yeah, I might be wrong about that. Like, it might not be missing, but... yeah, this is nice. Like, this is a really nice BIOS at this point. Like, yeah, you know, you don't get all of the profiles like some other boards, but, well, no, like, this works. Like, this is fine. Like, okay, having the two sets of voltages is a bit weird, but, right, like, having recore here and then also in the external voltage settings menu, but, like, that's not really a problem, in my opinion. Like, that's not a big deal. That's, like, a lot... like, that's by far not the worst thing I've ever seen in a BIOS, right? So, yeah, I like it. I really do. At this point, like, this is good. I guess I need to, like, change my recommendations videos for X570 boards now, because it's just, like, my biggest complaint for Asrock for the longest time has just been, look, guys, the BIOS, it's awkward, it's weird. But they've fixed that, so yeah. that's it for the video. So thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. Hell, you can help other people figure out what the settings I didn't know what they are. You can tell people what they are. Because yeah, there's just too many settings in the advanced tab here, which is not a bad thing. I think honestly, like, that's the whole point of the advanced tab, right? Like, it's advanced. If you need some kind of really obscure random setting that, like, I don't even know what it does, well, here they are. Though I still don't get why there's NUMA stuff here, because, like, as far as I know, you can't get NUMA CPUs on the AM4 socket. But, you know, like, I don't know, like, even if it's there and it doesn't work, like, it's in the advanced menu. Like, you shouldn't, like, you won't, like, just don't use it then, right? Like, if it's not supposed to be there. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button, leave comments, questions, suggestions, and if you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, you can support me directly through Patreon, which helps a lot because it allows me to do things like just straight up buy a motherboard like this, right? So, because I did have to buy this thing. So yeah, big thanks to the patrons for funding the purchase of this board. Or you can, you know, support the channel by buying some AHOC merch from the actually hardcore overclocking Teespring store. There's a link to that down in the description below, and well, that helps in the same way as Patreon. What do you think paid for this motherboard, right? And yeah, there's shirts, stickers, posters, that kind of thing there. So if you'd like to pick something, pick up one of those items, there's a link. So yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.